I'm Dr. Lisa Knowles, and today we are going beyond 32 teeth once again and talking about a topic very near and dear to me, probably helped me actually go into the consulting profession, and that's the topic of substance abuse and how not only patients but my colleagues and dentists deal with stress and coping mechanisms. And today we're going to talk about substance abuse. And we are so fortunate to have Dr. Brett Kessler here to talk about his story and his struggles and triumphs in regard to substance abuse. So, Dr. Brett Kessler, thank you for being here. Can you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, thanks, Lisa. I'm a general dentist. I practice in Denver, Colorado. I've been in practice for about 20 years. I did my training at University of Illinois in Chicago, then a GPR at Northwestern. And my wife is an orthodontist, and we got married in dental school, and she moved us to Michigan. And so I practiced in Michigan for a few years before moving to Denver in 1999. And so I own a practice in the northeast part of Denver, and I've been very involved in this topic for the last 17 plus years. And I was really honored to be here. I saw an article that you wrote a month or two ago that I thought was a very courageous article discussing the topic of substance abuse, and it kind of coerced me to reach out to you and thank you for the courage to write something so controversial and try and bring it above the line. So thank you for doing that. So that's how I got to you. So.
I'm glad you saw that article then, because I think the more we talk about things, we've buried a lot of things over the years, and for me, I'm a pretty open book, and so I like to talk about things if it can help others, and I really think it can, as well as your story. And maybe you could dive into that too and tell us, maybe where did it start? Where did some of those coping mechanisms start for you?
I started drinking and getting high at the age of 13, and it was just a pure thing. My friends were doing it, and I did it too, and I really liked it. And but it never was a problem till much later. And I did very well in high school. I did very well in college. But the drugs in college started to get a little more. More of them, harder drugs and things like that. And, I started to suffer some signs of having a problem, but yet no consequences were happening. And when I got into dental school, I decided, I did well enough to get into dental school. And,
yeah.
But when I got into dental school, I decided that, this is it. I'm just going to be, just kind of normal, no more of the drugs. And, this is my career. I want to do the best I can. And I did very well in dental school, but about my third year, the hard drugs found me again, and and I started to go back to my old ways, and but yet still no consequences were coming my way, so I continued along that line. When I got into a GPR at Northwestern, and again, same decision, the same discussion in my head that this is it. My career is now right in front of me, and I can't sell these crazy drugs anymore. And I'm going to be a dentist, and I want to live a happy, healthy life. And but again, about 9 months into the GPR, same thing happened, and the drugs found me, and and it kept going. When I moved to Michigan, again, I had found a job. I actually worked in Flint, Michigan, but I lived in Ann Arbor. But I was very afraid to buy drugs in Michigan for whatever reason, and so I would go make trips back to Chicago, where I grew up, to find excuses to get home, and I would I was making a lot more money now, and I decided I would buy more drugs, and because I didn't know when I was coming back to Chicago, so the quantity started to increase, and and then all of a sudden consequences started to happen, and I had two bottoms. The first bottom was I wanted to take my staff from my practice to Chicago for a dental conference, and I dropped them off at the hotel, and and I disappeared for the weekend because I went on a binge, and and it was kind of not pretty. And when I got back to Michigan, I called. Michigan, by the way, you know this, has a very strong well-being program, and there's someone on call that you can call and ask for help, and they'll direct you to resources. And that guy on the other, when I finally decided to ask for help, that guy on the other end, his name was Jim Oles, and Jim told me what I needed to do, and I said to him on the phone, he told me I had to go to rehab and all this stuff, and I wasn't ready to hear that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, wrong number. And I hung up on him and found my own way to rehab and, started along the path of recovery. Jim and I are great friends now, by the way, and we laugh about that phone call because I wanted nothing about what he said, and which is pretty common in
Sure.
people who are seeking the answers. But anyway, at rehab, they taught me some things, and I wasn't sure I had the problem as bad as a lot of people, my cohorts in the rehab, and they gave me a list of things that I needed to do after I get out, and I didn't do any of those because I didn't feel I needed to, and I dove into trying to create an illusion that I was normal again, and I dove into work, and I dove into relationships, and I dove into training for a triathlon, but the drugs found me again, and that was pretty scary because once you kind of cross over the line from having a normal brain to a brain that suffers from addiction, you can't go back. It's like a cucumber. Once it's pickled, it can't go back to a cucumber. And at this point, my brain is pickled. And I wasn't, it was kind of scary because, once I put a substance in my body, all bets were off on what was going to happen, how long I was going to be gone, how much drugs I was going to do, how much money I was going to spend, what kind of crazy things I was going to do. So, and I learned all this in rehab, but now I yet still chose to start that first drink, and it led to that binge. And so the next 14 months I kind of waffled back and forth through these nightmares, and then I finally hit a bottom in October of 1998, where I went back to Chicago to one of my best friend's mother's funeral, and I could not help myself, but I called my dealer, and I couldn't stop myself. I was in this this
Familiar
zone.
territory.
Yeah, the momentum was there, and I couldn't stop it. And and I chose to call my dealer. I chose to buy drugs, and I disappeared again. I missed the funeral, and at that point, I knew fully what I was, which was a drug addict, and I needed to do what I needed to do to get help. And so I dove into recovery from there. And I was welcomed, in rooms of 12-step meetings and, group therapies and things like that. And whatever I needed to do, I did to realize how fragile this sobriety thing is and what I need. Just like a diabetic must take his insulin every day. I needed to do something for my recovery every day, and I still live that way today. Over the years, things have kind of opened up for me. There was, when I moved to Colorado, I had to answer certain questions about my past to get a license. Have you ever, been in trouble for drugs? Have you ever gotten a felony? Blah blah blah. I never got a felony, but I committed many. Just never got caught. And so they put me on a probationary status with my license, and it was probably for my own good, though I didn't like it at the time. They set up it's called a diversion or a well-being program, where I had to prove my recovery on a regular basis. And so I had to do drug testing, random drug testing. I had to do group therapies in Colorado. I had to show up to things and get my sheet signed when I attended recovery meetings and things like that. And for a couple of years, it really, allowed me to create positive habits for recovery. And in turn, what they did was advocate for my license. And, and it's always been a struggle of, what do you do with doctors who might have problems like this? And these programs that substitute these positive behaviors have a really, really high success rate. In the upwards of 80 to 85% of people who go through these programs are going to, get their lives together, and It's not very easy, it's not very fun, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who try and get help on their own, there's a 3 to 6% chance of them getting it together on their
Really?
own.
Hmm.
And so these programs are in place for the person's best interest, and most healthcare professionals have it: physicians, dentists, nurses, pharmacists, veterinarians, et cetera. And have these programs that really are there to help the practitioner get back into their lives, and we found also that they are better practitioners as a result because we have now coping mechanisms to deal with the stresses of our lives, including the stresses of our professional lives. So.
If anyone has any stress while being a dentist or in the dental profession, right?
No, it's the most
It's all
stress-free.
easy after that, after you graduate, right? Oh no, I'm beginning to think that dental school was part of the training, and the hoops and jumping and all that was actually, that probably was good in hindsight. Even though I didn't appreciate it, it definitely produced some resilience in all of us, didn't it?
That's
Because
right.
it's pretty stressful when you get out. Hey, do you know? I mean, obviously, I know about the Michigan Wellbeing Programming Committees, and you know about the Colorado ones. So is that pretty much statewide? Do you think every state dental association has that? Correct? A well-being type of committee or group?
Right. And I have right. I'm a consultant to the American Dental Association around well-being issues, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that the states have these resources available. And if there's a few states that don't,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority, and I think 90% of them do. But a lot of calls are fielded by the Allison Bramhall at the American Dental Association.
Okay.
She's the well-being director there, and she directs them to the help they need. And and I get calls like Jim Oles got calls back in the day for me. I try and be that person for people seeking help in our profession, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a tremendous relief, I'm sure, for someone just like Jim was for you. And I think we'd love to believe that, this doesn't happen too often, and the pressures to be those pillars in our society and things. But I just think that only makes it worse, and that we are all vulnerable, whatever profession we're in.
Absolutely.
And for me, like I said in the intro, is I was and I am tired of seeing people take their lives. Another coping mechanism that doesn't result end too well either. And I know then if it's not taking your own life, it's taking a drug or a substance, or a lot of times, colleagues wherever we're at is, I don't know, I just have a stiff drink after a day, or I just, have a few glasses of wine and I'm good. And, we say it in jest, but I know there's some truth behind that. And I think that can lead to a slippery slope if we're not careful, and almost condoning that, that's how we all deal with our stress. And how I got into I knew I didn't want to do that for my own health and things, and where I ended up taking the natural path of the meditation, yoga route, stress reduction type things, exercise, nature, all those options, and I try to help people find those things now too, which sounds like you attempted those two, diving into being a triathlete, and I'm sure that probably helps. At least you're burning off some of that cortisol, but then you can be addicted to the exercising, right? So
Well, the well-being is multifaceted. It's not just being sober. It's making sure your spirit is fed, making sure your physical side of your body is doing well. Make sure you're emotional. Make sure your mental sides are doing well. And combination of those four things, really, you find happiness. And we try and find balance of all four, things that feed your spirit. And I found a way to practice dentistry that, isn't that stressful anymore. And I choose my path with the treatment I do with my patients, but it's a partnership with my patients, and I'm not in par with any insurance company, so I just have a relationship based practice because that's what feeds my soul and allows me to do the best work I can do for in the best interest of my patients. And so I've put up designed a life that is feeds my soul
right.
in a positive way, and I've met thousands of dentists over the years who are struggling with something. It doesn't necessarily have to be substance abuse, but they're struggling with something. And we're taught in dental school to be self-sufficient, and we got to know everything, and we have to look good, and we're not allowed to show any sign of weakness. And that's our training. So when we get out of the office, what do? We need to release that, that somehow. And so if we can find ways to do it in a positive way, everybody's happier.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna dig back in just a little bit from what you were saying to me. When did you absolutely know that you had an issue or a problem? Like, was it? I kept hearing you say consequences. Is that basically what you think? That's ultimately what always gets to when someone has an addictive personality or things going on. It's got to be a hard consequence. They hit the bottom. Well, I've heard that many times. Hit the bottom or have a severe consequence. Is that it, or did you knew, but it still didn't matter?
Right, and that's really what it was. I knew probably in college that I had a problem, but so did everyone else around me, and it wasn't. It was the normal for the time, and I surrounded myself with people that drank like I did and partied like I did, and and so I fully understood that I had a problem when on my last binge, when I looked in the mirror and saw that I'm really out of control. And I this is 14 months after rehab, and I still chose a wrong path, and that's part of the brain, the addicted brain, that it's seeking something quick to make it feel better, and it's ingrained in our neural pathways for that to happen. So that's really when I fully understood, and the people that I know who are in recovery, we're experiential learners, and we have to experience everything for us to understand. And one of the jokes in our 12-step rooms is you can always tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them anything. And, and I'm sure that's going to resonate with a lot of people who may see this, but we have to fully decide that, hey, the path I'm on isn't the right path, but it has to be something that comes from within. It can't come from my wife. It can't come from my staff. It can't come from my friends. It has to come from me. But what happens when I finally made that decision, the recovery road opened way up for me, and that's what usually happens when in my brain, whatever I focus on grows, and on the positives. And when I do that, the positives just kind of laid out right in front of me as I walk the path.
Speaking of your family, you said that.
Yeah.
What were your family and friends doing at this time? Did they know? Did you get any? Hey, Brett, I'm concerned. I mean, what did your parents or anybody see it? Anybody know about it? Try to help, or is it like you said? I mean, obviously, it just has to come from within, but. I'm curious as far as what is a friend or family member to do in this situation when you might see something going on?
Right. I was very secretive about it, and I chose my use wisely. Let's say that. And I had a few friends that did express concern, but I just said I'm okay. And when I was done with a drug binge or alcohol binge, I would, just kind of be normal again, and because I wasn't suffering consequences, everyone was like, oh, okay, he's doing okay. My wife had no idea, my family had no idea, and I have to say this every time I speak, that my wife is should be considered for sainthood, because she stuck it out with me through all this. But it wasn't just the addicted years. The recovery years is where I really feel that she deserves a sainthood, because I had no tools to live. My drinking wasn't my problem. It was my solution to dealing with the stresses of life. And all of a sudden we took away my solution, and I had to learn, how to, just deal with life and be in a relationship, and, and grow that relationship. And it's, I'm very lucky and blessed to have what I have. And, I had a great support system who, just again, never unwavering support from friends and family that I still have today. I had to change some of my playmates and playgrounds, because it was just too hard to be around certain people or certain places.
Right.
And but my family, and I try and to make amends for those years. I try and be active in all their lives and contribute to their lives, in ways through my experience as well, and be a positive role model for recovery and for my wife, for my kids, for my family and siblings and stuff like that.
So basically, the rehabilitation programs, that's where you learned how to you learn mechanisms to cope with life. And
Well,
is that what you mean by where you had to learn that?
well, I mean, the rehab program was 6 weeks, and that was early on, and and it didn't work. I didn't get sober. It planted seeds for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I really found um, the tools to live in 12-step rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Working with other people who have had similar experiences, and the mentorship, guiding of people who had experience in what I was going through at particular times, and that's how the beauty of those rooms. It's there's a lot of experience there that is openly shared, but it's a leap of faith to go there.
Yeah, but it's a real safe zone. It sounds like. I mean, where
Right.
else can you be that open and honest? And I think probably that's part of the beauty too.
Right. And we have specific meetings, recovery meetings for healthcare professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they have them in Michigan and around the country,
Mm-hmm.
where there's certain things you can't share in regular, normal people meetings, and
Right.
about work and about the stresses that are going on, and we can be even more open in those venues. And there's a rehab that I work with here in Denver that there's a lot of doctors and nurses and dentists that come here to this rehab because it's specific for healthcare professionals, and we can talk openly and honestly, and you see the shame that they come in with, and when
Mm-hmm.
they realize that, hey, there's people here who have been through what we've been through,
Right.
and you're going to get through it too. It's really it's kind of magical watching
Mm.
that
But
switch flip for them. So really
that's
kind of
great.
cool.
So now what do you do? What's your natural highs? Your family sounds like. What else do you do? Maybe when you are stressed, when you have a different go-to. What is a day in the life of Dr. Kessler?
Well, it's similar to what you do. You mentioned yoga, meditation. I do that. I do a lot of different kind of exercises. I'm a trail runner. I love to
Mm-hmm.
run the trails here in Colorado. I love to ski and just play in the mountains any way I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a lot. I enjoy time with our kids. I journal. I attend recovery meetings. I'm very involved in organized dentistry here in Colorado and nationally. Just find ways to feed my spirit. It's wonderful, and I've been sober 17 plus years, and I couldn't imagine going back to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of the people I've gotten sober with die,
Mm-hmm.
where they've decided to go back to try it one more time, and I view this as a real fragile gift, and so I view my recovery as number one. And every day I wake up and I in my meditations I ask myself, what am I doing today for my recovery? And and I don't go to 12-step meetings every day, but I go to a few a week, but I talk to other people who are marching the path on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful thing. And so and so it's just it's life now, and it's
Yeah.
just what it is,
Yeah.
you know.
Um, kind of looking back, thinking about this stormy time in your life, what's your best takeaway lesson? And knowing that we all struggle with something, like you said, and we all stumble, we all have our moments. How has this made you a better person and maybe even a better dentist?
Okay, good question. Um, it growing up in this with this problem, my brain was very closed, and I couldn't see outside what my brain would let me see. And once I found the truth, and my brain was not telling me the truth, I a whole world opened up to me, and I saw all sorts of opportunities where I can contribute to the world as opposed to take away from the world. And the cool. I think it's a really cool how my life had unfolded when I finally told the truth about what was going wrong with me, and the honesty. It's very hard to see it in ourselves, and denial is a big part of any
Oh
mental
yeah.
illness. And because we don't know, we're kind of in it, but we can't see it. And so my advice is for, if is to be open and communicate what's going on in your brain with someone you can trust, and and just get it out in from the dark into the light. And I've never been I've never had problems when I did that, and I shared vulnerable things about what's going on with me, and so that's what I would, recommend to anybody who's going through things, because everybody's going through things. And if we can, we don't, as a society here in America, we don't know how to talk about it. We sweep it under the rug, and the stigma involved is really tough to overcome.
Right.
But now in the political limelight, there's a heroin problem, and it's fed from the opiate problem,
Mm-hmm.
that but all of a sudden middle class white kids are dying of heroin overdoses. So now people are talking about it, and it's becoming you know just more and more above the line. I
How many
spoke
more
at
lives do we want to lose
Right,
before we say something?
right.
So,
And so we're talking to dental schools. We've been doing this for years,
mm,
just planting seeds for the students. And I did this about a month ago. I was at the CU dental school, and I asked everyone in the audience. There was about 50 students there. Has anyone experienced, either friends, family, or personal, they experienced any issues around addiction? And everybody in the room there raised their hand. And so the kids growing up these days they know the dangers of drugs, and they're open to talking about it. Where when you or I were doing that, it was just the fringe kids that were doing it, and no one was talking about it. And we
mm,
we hit it very well, and
mm.
but look where it got us. But so just the discussion, the stigma is starting to get much. Is starting to lower big time, and I
Yeah.
really love that. I'm trying to be an advocate for that.
Well, I
You
admire
know,
you for that, and I know not everyone's ready to do that or comfortable doing that. But sharing your story, I know this is going to touch several lives. There are people who are listening or watch this, or
right,
because it can happen to us, right? It can happen to you. It can happen to me.
right,
And knowing that we all struggle with something, we all have those storms, and it's okay. Even if you have
right.
DR in front of your name, and
That's right,
whoever you are, wherever you are in your path, it
right,
happens. And sometimes for a reason, and you get to be that give back person 17 years later. So
right.
I
You know,
appreciate you today taking time out of your schedule, talking with us about this. And do you have any last comments or thoughts or advice that you want to share?
well, just finishing up with the part of the question, how did it make me a better dentist? It really, I followed down the path of the Pankey philosophy, which is basically the path of not just doing excellence in dentistry, but building your best life ever.
Mm,
And so that's really been wonderful. And so it started to give back to the community. I started a project where I would treat residents of a drug and alcohol treatment center here in Colorado that served the needs of the homeless. And they got off the street, they got sober, and they got some tools, they got vocational training, and I was happy to help them with their smile.
yeah.
And watching them, the smiles on their face. I mean, if any, what I learned about dentistry, I learned through that, about the power of a smile,
Yeah.
and the power, and it's a wonderful thing. This project, spurred a lot of interest from a lot of the other treatment centers in Colorado, and so they started calling me and asking me if I could do free dental work for their residents too. And
Oh,
I wish I could have, but
you're
I had
right.
to make a living, and so I called the dental society and asked them if they knew anybody that was doing this kind of work. And they said no, but it sounds like a really interesting project. Maybe we'll write a story about what you're doing, and maybe we can shake some dentists out of the trees, and they can come and help. And
Right.
so they wrote a nice article about it, and then started volunteering for different treatment centers, and really it was kind of cool. A couple years later, the methamphetamines became a big story, and trickled to Colorado, and the media started asking questions about this meth mouth phenomenon. And they contacted the dental society, and they immediately called me and asked if I knew anything about meth mouth. And I kind of smiled and said, yeah, I've been treating it for last 5 years, and everyone's got it here. It's crazy. And they asked if would you be willing to go on TV and talk about it. And I was like, I don't know. So we, after a lot of consultations with some people I trusted, and decided I would do it if they would focus on the patients. And not focus on me doing this benevolent work. I didn't want that kind of publicity. I wanted to talk about the patient. I wanted to show that there is a solution to addiction. Recovery is possible. And I also wanted to put dentistry in a good light in the media, which rarely happens. So I really, I did it. And I asked a couple of my patients if they would be willing to talk on TV. They could not wait to do it. And so they did a wonderful story on them. And then the other media news stations in Colorado did it. I think we did 5 different stories, the same story, different versions. One of those stories got picked up by CNN, and it went national for a weekend.
Wow.
And then the American Dental Association heard about me and started asking some questions. And they invited me to testify in Washington, D.C., on behalf of a bill they were trying to get more funding for meth mouth. And it was kind of a dream. It was very surreal. I just couldn't believe this was happening. For a guy like me, now I'm, talking to Congress about, meth. And I shared my story. I shared that I was in long-term recovery from the disease, and one of the congressional aides afterwards said, Dr. Kessler, you don't look like a drug addict, and I kind of laughed. And I said, well, you didn't see me 7 or 8 years ago, but because I'm white, I'm middle class, I was afforded the opportunity to get help. And I kind of threw the ADA under the bus, because I said, if you need to decide on, to give money towards meth mouth or give money towards treatment of addiction, please give it to the treatment, because we don't do dentistry very well on dead people. And, it kind of hit them home. We didn't ever get the bill passed, but, I got to share that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's great.
And then through that, I was, asked to serve on various committees in Colorado, and I just finished my term as president of the Colorado Dental Association, all being open about my recovery, and being able to share that there is a future when it looks so bleak at the time of the contemplation time, when should I get help, should I not? And so I always want to share that you can live the best life possible in recovery, and you take away the substance, get some tools to live, and the world is your oyster. So.
Oh, thank you for sharing that important message. And I know, at those moments it looks pretty dismal during the substance abuse. So hearing you say that, I think is a great inspiration to our profession, any healthcare profession, anyone who is dealing with some substance abuse, whether personally or with their family or colleagues. It's a great thing to know that there is help. It does take work, but there's a great rainbow at the end, right, Brett?
Absolutely, absolutely. Pot of gold is there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for going beyond 32 teeth with me today, and really taking a look at our profession in more depth. And I appreciate your time today. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you so much for having me, and asking those questions. Call those numbers in your state well-being. It's anonymous. It doesn't force you into anything, but you might get some answers to your problem. So thank you.